Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge Season 7, Episode 47, otherwise known as Episode 400. I'm Vance Bastian, here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Howdy.
And we're really glad you're here with us. On today's show, Albert Nothlit returns to discuss the second part of his series, followed by our review of The Big Brunch. And then Baz and I will share what's held our attention this week. So if you like hearing updates from queer content creators, support us on Patreon, hit our merch store, like us on YouTube, get the notifications. But now, on to our guest. Albert Nothlit is a writer and an engineer who enjoys creating science fiction worlds. He thinks it's amazing to be able to connect with people by sharing stories, which are essentially pieces of his soul. He is always thankful when a reader gives him feedback. For him, hearing back from readers is the best part of the writing process. Albert, welcome back.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on the 400th episode. That is amazing.
Thank you very much.
So we took Albert from episode 4 and multiplied him by 100.
That's right.
Yeah, that is so cool. It must have been such a long journey for you guys.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean,
it's very ethereal.
Well, like any long journey, it was a bunch of small steps, so none of them felt entirely epic. But when you look back, you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow, it's really amazing.
Thanks. So for folks who haven't heard your first couple interviews, just give us a really quick how you became an author. Why did you first put that pen to paper and decide to share it with the world?
Sure. So as a kid, I always loved reading books. It's something that has always touched me, maybe emotionally. And there's this thing where I read something and I decide, well, after reading something that has touched me emotionally, it motivates me to contribute back to the world and maybe to create something that can maybe connect with another person. So there's this kind of inspiration thing that I think has been really meaningful for me over the years. And I started writing when I was like in high school, I think. Most of the things I wrote weren't very good. Then I just kept doing it. And now, I think I've gotten better over the years. So yeah.
Nice. So last time you were here with us, we discussed Life Seed, which was your future planet, but very ecologically focused adventure story. And now book 2 is out, World Warden.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. So this World Warden is the conclusion to Life Seed. It's just a two-parter. And here, what I'm trying to do is close out the story in a much broader context. So Life Seed, as we discussed last time, was more about the story of humans coming to an alien planet and maybe altering the balance that was there. And in World Warden, we really get to see the entirety of the planet. So the protagonist of the last book goes out into the world and gets to see really what the planet is about and what the ramifications of the human intervention have been. And we also get to see the planet more from the perspective of the world, which are the dominant species on the planet. So these sentient reptiles, which are really big and powerful, but we didn't really get a chance to know much about them in the first book. And now we really get to explore kind of their side of the story.
Nice. So one of the topics you wanted to talk about, I thought was fascinating in the nature of the memory.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as I was reading about you're touching on this in the topic, you have one of the queens of the world has ancestral memories, right?
Correct. So the way I organize the world is that, so the planet of New Sky is, we would say maybe, I don't want to say ruled, but maybe dominated by the world, which are a species of sentient reptiles. And among them, there are only 3 females, which I call the world queens. And each of them kind of dominates over an environment. So in the previous book, in Life Seed, we met Cisra, which is kind of the Earth Queen. And in this book, the main antagonist is Dresde, which is the Flyer Queen, the Queen of the Skies. And so these are kind of like, so I suppose you can imagine them as like really big dragons with different attributes and characteristics. And so all of these 3 females share the memories of their mothers. So they remember everything their mothers remember. And one of the main conflicts in World Warden is the fact that 2 of the factions of World Queens, so the Flyer Queen Dresde and the Swine Queen, which is Cisra, have been at war for a very, very long time, ever since they can remember. And I kind of wanted to explore what it is like to maybe be born with the memories of someone who hates another faction of maybe people or beings in a planet, and how you can manage that conflict and whether there can be a resolution or not.
Which is very different than it being a learned hatred.
Yep.
Because it's baked in. I mean, it's part of who they are.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. As soon as they hatch, like each of the world queens kind of gets all of the memories from their mothers, but each one is an individual. So they can't decide how to act on them.
Okay.
And that's something that is, I really wanted to explore that. Like, how does your memory there, and like inborn or maybe something you learn over your life can change your own decisions, I suppose, when so many bad things have happened over generations in the case of the book. Like, what can be done about it if like something can be done?
Now, does your hero interact with her in such a way that it helps her make that decision?
So, well, oh, that's interesting. So the protagonist of the story, Elias, does interact with Reza, the main antagonist, but there is another. So in the first book, Life Seed, Elias has a little brother named Oscar, and Oscar becomes kind of also the protagonist of book two, and he is the one who interacts a little bit more with Reza, which is who is the
Okay.
antagonist, and. But the problem is that Dresde does not see humans, and particularly human males, as equals, because from her perspective, the way her world is organized, only females are truly sentient. So she doesn't really respect them in the same way. And there's another very important character named Samantha who is introduced in this new book. And her interactions with Dresde are very interesting because they are the only ones who can kind of maybe talk on the same level. And Dresde specifically is very, very smart. She's very crafty and very suspicious of humans specifically. One of the main plot points of the book is that when humans arrived to her planet, Dresde immediately recognized that humans could be a threat. And unlike Sisra from the previous book, Dresde enslaved the small human colony that lived on her continent. So the way the protagonists interact with her, I would say, is different because since she does not see them as equals for most of them, then their opinions don't count as much. But there are elements, things that happen in the book, like in a broader context, that can or that will maybe affect the way she sees the ancestral conflict, perhaps.
Got it.
Yeah.
One of your other points of topic was bravery, and I'm assuming you mean Elias.
Yeah, in this case, actually, it's the bravery of Elias's younger brother,
Oscar, okay.
because, yeah, so in the first book, Elias has always been a very maybe determined person, a very determined young man, and he sees something that must be done and he does it. And then in this book, the last book ends, spoiler alert, in case nobody has read it, but anyway, it's just said at the beginning of the first book. It's
Okay.
that Oscar is abducted by Dresde, and he is forced to go to this other colony, very small colony, where there are enslaved humans, and he is among them. And he is super scared because it's a new environment. He doesn't know what to do. And at the beginning, he is paralyzed by his fear of this terrifying alien creature and all of these horrible things that have been happening there. So I really wanted to explore that because I have been scared many times in my life. And sometimes there's kind of this element of maybe you feel ashamed to be scared. And I try to explore that in the book, where at the beginning, Oscar is very young. He's like 13, 14. And so he's put in this very difficult situation. And he thinks he is not brave like his brother. He idolizes his brother. And little by little, he maybe gets to learn what his own kind of bravery is, which is something I also did in my own life. So I thought that was a very interesting thing to explore in the book.
Very much so.
Absolutely.
Your final topic was the most fascinating, which is why I put it last, in that you were exploring the fact that on our Earth, everything is more or less bilateral, and you were looking at trilateral biology.
Yeah, so that was me nerding out a little bit because I mean, I love biology and things. I'll always I don't know, I'll watch every nature documentary I can. And I got to thinking, yes, like on Earth, I mean, there are many kinds of organisms on Earth, but most of the organisms we can find on land tend to have bilateral symmetry. Some of them have radial symmetry, but like most of the appendages and organs and things exist either as twos or as ones. Yeah, so we have two eyes, for example, two pairs of limbs, etc. Even arthropods kind of have an even pair of appendages. But I was like, well, what if maybe the dominant number was not two or was not like an even number, but three? And so in the planet, most of the animals have characteristics that are based on the number 3. And the example I like the most is birds. Like on the planet of New Sky, there are birds who have 3 wings and 3 wings. And I was like, well, how could a bird with 3 wings even fly?
Right.
And so I started thinking about it, and I decided that they would fly in kind of a corkscrew motion, like spiraling through the air, with
Okay.
each wing beating one at a time. So I don't know. It was, yeah. Once I started thinking about that number, many interesting opportunities presented themselves, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to do that as Elias and Oscar are walking through the planet and discovering all of these things. I really had fun coming up with new and weird creatures that they see all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Can you share another one without it being too much of a spoiler?
Not a spoiler. Well, I created lots of arthropods, I suppose, and they tend to have just like, for example, I don't know, like 3 legs or 3 appendages or things that protrude and retract. And so the world queens themselves, they tend to have like 3 eyes, for example, or maybe they have like, I don't know, they tend to have 6 appendages, because I didn't need them to be, I mean, they couldn't be too weird.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they do have like, for example, 6 legs, which is a multiple of 3 and so on. So yeah, I think that was probably the most fun I had, creating new and interesting aliens.
Well, and your concept of 3 also resonated amongst the characters in that there are 3 queens.
Yes,
There's
that's
Elias,
true.
Oscar, and Samantha.
Yeah. Yes,
I
yes,
mean,
yes.
Your
That-
threes
mhm.
kind of carried the book.
Yes, I tried to do that throughout the entire novel. So yes, so in this world, there are 3 maybe locus points of the world which are protected by the 3 queens, and there are 3 very important human characters in the book, as you point out. And there are other little things of 3 that I'm not going to talk about because they're spoilers. But so yeah, it's very interesting when you take something that's very simple and you try to base an entire world around that, because it just opens new possibilities. And I don't know, I like the symbolism too.
Oh, yeah.
It seems cool.
It is very cool. Is there anything else about World Warden that you want to share that I haven't asked?
Well, yes, actually, I was talking with some middle school children who had read Live Seed as part of this program called Rainbow Reads, where some like children are assigned a book to read, and then you get to talk to them. It was amazing.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah. And so one of the kids asked me a question I hadn't been asked before, which was, I was talking about how when I create characters, I always put a little bit of myself into the characters. And like I was talking about with Elias and how he can be very, like, I don't know, a little bit, maybe like an overthinker, and I was an overthinker. And then he asked me, and what about Dresde, the main antagonist? Like, do you have a little bit of her? And I was like, oh, I mean, because she's this evil character. And I was like, well, wait, so am I evil? And then I was like, because we, as writers, we have to create antagonists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what I answered and what I discovered was that I put in her some of the things that maybe I don't like too much about myself, but that can be good given the circumstance. Like, she is, like I said, she's really intelligent, she's crafty, she is suspicious. And there have been times in my life when I have been maybe really suspicious of other people. For example, I find it very difficult to trust others sometimes. And I do have a kind of a little cynical streak that I don't like that much. And I put that into this character to show that, I mean, yes, even the antagonists have parts of us. And I found that question really interesting.
That's a really brilliant question.
Yeah, especially for that age, for them to pull that out. I also think it's kind of interesting because, one of the things I think we need to impart to young readers is that someone may appear as a villain, but from their perspective, they feel they're right in what they're doing. And so that gives them the ability to understand the grays between people, the not so black, not so white, but that there is a gray space where it's all in perspective, how you look at it, where you're coming from, and that kind of thing. But it's a truth. It may not be a truth that you agree with or that you think is just, But for those kids to ask a question like that to you, kudos to them. That's really big thinking. That's abstract thinking.
Right.
Yeah. No, and it's true, because from her perspective, like from Dres's perspective, humans came to her world as invaders.
Absolutely.
They are there and they're trying to destroy things. So she does recognize, and I think that's what I like about her as a character. Like, if I had been in her shoes, I would also have been very suspicious of some aliens coming and I would have been scared of what they could do to my world. So yeah, I mean, I think these maybe shades of gray for characters are very important. It's incredible.
Excellent. I love that.
So folks can pick up World Warden now. I saw the link on your site. It's also on Amazon. Anyplace else?
Correct. Yes, it should be everywhere like ebooks and other books are sold. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Where should folks follow you for updates on what you're doing next? Well,
there's always my website, albertnothlit.com, where I post any new things that are coming up and any new projects. Right now, I'm right in the process of writing new stuff.
Nice.
Nothing yet is planned for the near future, but yes, I mean, there's always updates over there.
Perfect. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Well, maybe going back to the discussion of like how characters have a little bit of everyone, like maybe something that I've always enjoyed is that when I read many books by the same author, I feel like I kind of get to know them as a person way more deeply than maybe even people around them sometimes do, because you kind of get this insight into their minds and the things they really like, the things they don't, and things they fear. So I think it's a privilege to be able to get to know a person like that through their art. So that's my wisdom for today, I suppose.
All right.
I love that. All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Albert Nothlit for coming back and sharing part 2 of his Life Seed / World Warden series with us. Albert, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. If you enjoy learning about new artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for our episodes. If you'd like to hear the full interview, check out our Patreon. But now, on to our review. That was really cool catching up with Albert.
Yeah, it totally was. And I can't wait till we do the whole sci-fi thing.
So, this week we are not reviewing a story so much as reality television, but I promise you it's in theme. The Big Brunch, created by Daniel Levy of Schitt's Creek fame. He had actually been a host.
No Moira, unfortunately.
No. Although my husband keeps swearing she's going to make an appearance. I'm like, no, she's not. She's not. He actually had some experience as a host of a food show. He was the host for 2 seasons of the Canadian Bake Off, a franchise of the Great British Baking Show. But he wanted to pull together his own baking show, and I think he did it right because he got rid of a lot of the problem aspects of baking shows. One, there's no gimmick. They're not in a tent. They're not fighting the elements. They are not like surprised with 3 ingredients every episode. This show really is about professional bakers. So sorry, Nailed It fans. These are not amateurs. Professional bakers really making good food.
And cooks too, not just bakers. But...
Bakers and cooks, yes. Really making good food. Another aspect I think they did really well is they specifically looked for contestants who had a dream so that their $300,000 prize money could go towards something. And we've seen some amazing dreams described. Like one has a farm-to-table farm where he shows inner city kids how their food is actually grown.
Yeah.
And he wanted to expand on that. There's another gay Asian woman from North Carolina, I believe she is. Yeah, she's amazing. And she just wants
from Nashville.
Yeah, she wants to share the cuisine of her heritage in new and modern ways in a restaurant. So all of the contestants have a dream as well that we're slowly learning, and they're unfolding as the episodes go on. But the set is a beautiful professional industrial kitchen on one side, so the contestants get to work in a real nice kitchen. And then the other side of the set is a dining room where the judges sit and kibitz and
drink.
The bartender actually right now is my husband's favorite person on the show. and she's amazing. They
Yeah, she
like
is.
they'll say like, I want something smoky and sweet, and she's like, I got you. Uh,
They give her all kinds of ethereal orders, and she's like, I'm on it.
I'm on it. Um, each episode does have a theme. So one theme was like locally sourced food from California. They were not limited to that. It wasn't like a surprise box. They could pick and choose what they wanted. And then they have access to a full pantry as well to support their ideas. Uh, what are some other? One of the themes, the very first theme was food that represents you, so they could get to know the contestants. I don't know. It's been really neat. There have been some growing pains, obviously. Season one. Uh, of the three judges, so Daniel Levy is one. Trying to remember the others. Will Guidara, who had run
Sola.
Will had run a very famous New York restaurant
Yeah.
that was like top of the Michelin list for a couple of years.
3
And
Michelin
then,
stars.
yep. And then Sola El Whaley, I believe is how you pronounce it, who had been a New York Times food critic, but also runs her own YouTube cooking channel. She's the harsh judge.
She is. She's the
and-
Paul Hollywood of this show.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like she feels it's her job to judge everything. So sometimes I felt like some of her critiques were forced because
Yeah, like she felt she had to dig for something.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it's like, really? You're going to go there?
But the humility of the judges also shines through because there was one challenge where one of the contestants had made a hot chili oil and she admitted that theirs was better than hers.
Yeah.
So the humility shines through. There's a fine dining episode which we're probably not going to cover because Baz hasn't seen it, where Dan Levy, who does not like oysters, actually is served an oyster dish he likes. So the judges freely admit that they are learning and growing as well as the contestants, and you get to see some contestant growth as well. So overall, a completely different concept for a baking show or baking contest show, but I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying it.
And the fact that it's a Dan Levy produced show means that queer inclusion, which is why we're reviewing it,
Correct.
is at the top of the list. I mean, I don't think he went out and recruited queer people, but he listened to the queer community who have their own aspirations and often don't get seen or have the potential to have those opportunities to grow their business.
Right.
So, in fact, they highlight one lesbian who had started a very seemingly profitable restaurant only to have started it like half a year before the pandemic hit and they were wiped out from it. So you see these things where
I thought she comes out in a later episode as fully non-binary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but they have a wife. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But so the highlight is that it's a queer couple. But that the restaurant seemed like it was going, people liked it. She said she described it was magical and how it started to take off, only get to be one of those businesses who succumbed to the pressures of the economy just falling apart.
Well,
Thanks
and they
to the orange orangutan in chief, but
and they also just hadn't had time to build enough of a following to survive the pandemic.
Yeah,
they didn't have a loyalty base because the business was too new.
Yeah,
so
yeah, so you do get those stories too.
Yep. And you get to see some amazing food. Like I said, these people know their flavors, they know their ingredients.
It's really the thing that astounded me the most was from the first episode when they were getting to know the cooks. They kept saying seasoning. And it's like, and then somebody, I think it was Sola who said, don't they taste their food before? Or, and it's like, come on, people, what are the first core things you learn as a cook is taste before you send it out there to make sure it's right, and yet you see, and it's funny because unlike the banter you see in Great British Bake Off or one of the other cooking shows or in Chopped, where they kind of chide each other,
right?
This one, when they go to cook, it's quiet as a mouse. It's like Dan has to go in there and whip up some humor dust just to get something going because they are silent when they work.
Well, and so that's the other cool thing. They will break the fourth wall on a regular basis. So Dan did that in one episode, and one of the contestants basically said, "I don't have time for you." Like,
Yeah.
she was so hyper-focused, she said, "I don't have time for you." So he went back and told the other two judges that had just happened, and Will, the restaurateur, was like, "I really appreciate focused cooks." So,
What a
like,
way to spin it, Will.
yeah. So yeah, like I said, I'm enjoying it. It is HBO Max, so F-bombs can be dropped and have been dropped.
Yep.
From the judges as well as the contestants. Like, Sola at one point actually said, "This is fucking delicious."
They're drinking, so it's like
Yeah.
as soon as I saw the alcohol come out, I'm like, oh well, all bets are off.
Yep.
You're not going to play this to kindergartner.
Uh-huh. So if you're looking for a relatively feel-good baking contest, this is the one to watch because they help each other. They actually like have formed a bond by episode 5. They're actually cooking breakfast for each other while they're waiting for the judges, which is pretty phenomenal as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I encourage
You
you to
can
watch
tell
it.
these people have a passion for
Oh,
what they're
100%.
doing. Yeah.
You want to go to your numbers?
Sure.
What are
Mine are
yours?
5s across the board. Come on. Who am I kidding? I'm not going to sit here and like try to justify why I'm giving 5s. Come on. It's Dan Levy. Come on, guys. It's Dan Levy. So the one thing I will say about it, that the reason why I'm giving 5s though, is because it gives the best of Chopped, the best of Bake Off, the best of like one of the other cooking shows. I don't know. I had one in my head and I lost it. Old Farts Disease. But it does the very best of those things, and they weave together something that's unique, that has a solid feel good about it. It's just something that makes you feel good about humanity in a great many respects, because you're seeing these people with these big dreams from different walks of life across the country, and you get to learn their stories. And so, it's an amazing approach to do it. And, from the genius of Dan Levy, it's going to be good. So 5s, yeah, across the board.
Mine are also 5s for a very similar reason. Like I said, they fixed a lot of the problems I had with all of the baking contest, cooking contest shows. And Will, the judge from New York, said something in the very first episode that has held true. He looked at the other two judges and he said, "I hope there's no villain." And there isn't. One of the things I've loved about the Great British Baking Show is they all help each other, and this carries through to this. But yeah, so 5s across the board. Like I said, it's a great watch, especially if you just need something at the end of the night to just relax and look at beautiful food and listen to fun people and watch, these amazing contestants try to fulfill their dreams. This is your show.
Excellent. Love it.
So, what are you on about this week?
I've got 3 things. I'm going to get the first 2 off the bat. Obviously, by the time this is being recorded, we had a tragedy over the weekend at Club Q in Colorado Springs.
Yes.
But from what I've seen and several YouTube clips I've watched of it, there were some heroic things happening inside the club when it went down. So unfortunately, we lost 5 people from our community, with I think up to 20 that are hospitalized to varying degrees of seriousness. But it could have been a lot worse. So, and I hate to put it in those terms, but with Pulse in our rearview mirror, we know how bad it can get. So, hearts and I don't want to say thoughts and prayers, because that is so overused and it has lost all meaning. But hopes and condolences to our brothers and sisters and theys out there in Colorado Springs. Secondly, I want to bring up. I don't know if people have read or heard about it, but Chris Hemsworth is fighting a very, very serious health battle. It's not something that he's afflicted with right now, but he did a show at the time he was filming Thor: Love and Thunder. He was doing another show that was about the resiliency of the human body and its ability to heal itself. And one of the things they did with the participants of it was that they did a deep dive DNA test of them. And their genetics came up, and his grandfather suffers from Alzheimer's. And so it's a known thing in his family. Um, and he got the news, and they did it off camera first, and then he decided he wanted it to be a part of the show. So kudos to him for allowing this so that the conversation can be had. But it came out in the genetic markings that he had twice the markers of predisposition to Alzheimer's. And so he is 10 times more likely to get it than even his grandfather. So it's kind of a very serious note. So he's decided as soon as he finishes his contractual obligations that he has, he is going to take some serious time away from everything to spend time with his family and stuff and figure out what he wants to do and how he wants to press forward. He's financially in a good place. So, just it's really sad. And of course, when I saw that, first thing I thought, okay, what about the other two brothers? Did they test? I mean,
Right.
Jesus,
Right.
But yeah, he ended up getting it from his mother's side and his father's side. So that's why he's double predisposed to have it. So very unfortunate news there, because I do like Chris Hemsworth a lot. The last thing is kind of my honorary Who Won My Week. And I'm just going to give a shout out to my husband for married life. That we've been together for 28 years this last September. And a couple of nights ago, we were reminiscing about one of our cats that we had in the past, who has now crossed the Rainbow Bridge. They're on the Bifrost in Valhalla. And we were laughing about how there was a period of time where we were in between places and we had to stay at a hotel kind of resort thing. And the people next door to us in the suite next door to us had a dog named Debbie. And I could not for the life of me recall that dog's name, because at one point we had our cat Gizmo, and we were kind of waiting, we were going in and out in the front door, and the dog had gotten out and had come right up to our door, and our cat puffed himself way up and scared the shit out of this little dog. And Jay was never more proud in his life. Anyways, so we could not remember that dog's name. Okay. So flash forward 2 days later, my husband and I are talking about Thanksgiving dinner, what we're going to make, what we have to buy, blah, 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 blah. We're comparing notes, talking about it. And all of a sudden in the middle, I go, Debbie. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. 2 days later, he was right there on the same damn page as me. And the reason why it's funny, we both started laughing because we didn't have to explain it. We knew exactly where we were in that conversation, completely out of context, and Debbie came flying through. And it's because the woman who had the dog had to have been a chain smoker for at least 40 years, because whenever she called the dog, it was, Debbie! So we have that burned in our heads, and we both knew it ended in an E sound, but we could not remember the root name, So it was just funny when I turned around and said, I just yelled, Debbie! He knew exactly what we were talking about. That's marriage, people. So I'm just going to say, that's my honorary Who Won the Week.
Nice.
My real Who Won the Week is my sister Carmel. She had 2 huge cake orders. I will put the pictures up here somewhere. And one was for a 90-year-old woman who was having her birthday party, and she wanted a Betty Boop themed cake. And here's the side story to that. In this picture I'm showing, she told my sister she didn't want any black in it. And we're like, she does remember it's Betty Boop, right? Her hair is fucking black.
Right.
And most of the cartoons were all black and white. So it's like her dress was black. So it's like, what? So just goes to show you, when you're a professional baker, you do get some really fucking bizarre requests. The second cake she did was for a quinceañera, and she had to do the cake, the main cake, and then she had to make a bunch of cake pops. And so she had all these things done, right? She goes to deliver it, and the lady who was the one who bought it, who paid her for it, wasn't at the church where the quinceañera was going to be held later on that day. So she had to leave it with, I think, one of her family members or something. And then she noticed there were like 3 store-bought sheet cakes and some cupcakes. She's like, here you go. And she put her masterpiece of a cake down next to these sheet cakes and her cupcakes. And she's like, what the hell's going on? And and this is so Latino. This is so fucking Latino, let me tell you. She said, well, she goes, oh, this is the case. We have more people than we thought we were going to have. So we just went out and bought stuff to compliment. And my sister's like, okay. She goes, and my sister went to leave. She goes, oh, you're leaving? My sister said, yeah, I'm not hanging around for this shit.
Nice.
That's Latino culture. Tough love.
Very
So
nice.
my sister won the week. How about you?
Well, I have 2 disparate things for what I'm on about this week. One, just couldn't help myself. I followed the fallout from the midterm elections, and a Wisconsin Republican, notice I didn't swear, said something that I hope resonates through the rest of the bloody party. He said, and I don't even want to say his name, but it was a Paul somebody, who said, as long as we continue to follow Trump, we will not get votes. Let's hope that resonates through the rest of that party. So that's one of the what I'm on about. The other one goes to my archaeology background. Dr. Kathleen Martinez and her crew found a series of tunnels near Alexandria that link 3 religious sites. They're all excited because they're seeing enough stuff that they think they may have found Cleopatra's burial, which
Wow.
I doubt, because there was plenty of proof that Cleopatra actually died in Europe, chasing Caesar back to Italy. So I don't know that they're going to find her burial necessarily, but they will find a lot of religious artifacts related to Cleopatra's reign.
Cool.
All in all, it's an amazing find, especially because these tunnels in Alexandria, just outside of Alexandria, are super important because the Nile could have washed away a lot more of them. There were earthquakes near Alexandria that could have destroyed them, and they found enough to actually start digging. So awesome. Awesome. And let's hope some crazy Egyptian monk somehow saves some books from Alexandria, or papyrus scrolls or something, because that would also be an incredible find.
Yep.
So what I'm actually on about is a change in the Senate that made me feel hopeful, and I didn't want to feel hopeful about our own government. But 12 Republican senators joined on the side of the Respect for Marriage Act.
And history. The right side of history.
On the right side of history, meaning it's on the table to be codified into law. Actual law, not just a Supreme Court decision. Do I feel hopeful about this? Yes. Should I? Probably not, because it's the American government. But we'll see.
We're good at snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory.
Right? So that's my stuff for this week. Got any words of wisdom?
Oh no, I'm tapped out.
Then I'll
I'm
share
just
one.
totally tapped out.
As we're going into this holiday season, keep in mind the struggles that some people are going through, like Chris Helmsworth, folks in Colorado. Hold your family close, love them, love yourself.
Take nothing for granted.
Take nothing for granted and take care of the people around you. All right, folks, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. Please like and subscribe. Our show is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, link to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.ropepodcast.com. I stumbled over a W. I apologize.
I was going to say, we're one shy.
By this point, if people don't know, there are 3 W's.
Yeah, right. What rock have you been under?
Take their phones away. All right. Go check out our merch store. Like us on YouTube. Yeah, exactly. Support us through the holidays, but stick around because we've got some fun stuff coming up and rolling out for you in the new year. So we'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What's that? Closing time. Bum's rush and melody, dear.